Rainbow desperately waved her hoof, but no matter what she did, she couldn't seem to get a grab hold of the fog. She reared up her hind legs and kicked as hard as she could, but her legs only hit air. Ugh, what is wrong with this fog? I can't even touch it, Rainbow huffed, stomping a hoof on the ground. I'm not sure it was like this for me too, Pinky then said, looking up at the sky. I originally tried to escape from here using my balloon to fly out, but it had too many holes in it. I didn't know what's beyond the fog bank. Well, I'm about to find out. If nothing else, I should be able to be rid of the fog, Rainbow said, spreading her wings up before racing up to the sky, disappearing from sight quickly. Do you think it's safe? Fluttershy asked, looking at Pinky curiously. Well, if anyone can handle herself, it's Rainbow Dash. I'm sure she'll manage to have this place cleared up in 10 flat... Pinky's words were interrupted by an ear-shearing roar that bounced out and echoed throughout the town. It felt like as if the earth itself was shaking into the roar. Fluttershy and Pinky instantly looked up from the sky in the direction of the roar, as Rainbow came barreling down through the fog at them. The music box in Fluttershy's bag began to hiss, with a sound similar to bees being stuck in the box. Hide, now! She yelled loudly, before swooping down to grab the hooves of her friends, before giving them a chance to re-register their words. She half dragged them behind when they all heard a tremendous thud shake the ground, as if something gigantic had landed quickly. What's going? Pinky tried to ask, only to have Rainbow quickly shove her hooves into her mouth, giving her a loud, shh. Look around the corner, carefully, Rainbow whispered harshly, before looking around the tree herself. Pinky and Fluttershy carefully looked around the corner themselves. Fluttershy's eyes widened as she felt as if her heart could stop at the sight of before them. A gigantic black dragon just landed in front of Twilight's house. It growled softly as black smoke billowed from its nose. It gave a snort, shooting out of the large part of the smoke into the air, as it swiveled and its head around, looking at the pony that had just escaped from its sight. It stepped out forwardly, carefully examined the building and the areas on the street. It gave another snort of frustration, with its wings opened up, giving them a good flap, lifting its body into the sky and causing everything to rattle and shake with the force of the wind. Within a few more quick flaps, it flew up into the fog-filled sky, disappearing from the sight. The buzzing of the music box faded away with the dragon. The free mare stood frozen, waiting until they could no longer hear the beatings of its wings, before letting out a collective sigh. What's the dragon doing here? Pinky asked, stepping up from behind the tree, looking up from where it had flown off. I don't know, but it seemed as know as where I was at the moment I started flying, Rainbow said, looking at her wings. I can't go up into the sky and clear this weather out of the way. If it knows that we are when I fly, Rainbow groaned. Mean I can't fly at all, and we're gonna have to deal with all this fog. It's alright, Pinky smiled reassuring. The fog's not so bad. Once we get inside, we should be able to see just fine. Well, if you say so, let's go, Fluttershy. Rainbow then quickly turned and looked at the ball of pink that was curled up, shivering on the floor. Fluttershy? She asked worriedly, quickly running over to her mare friend. A dragon that chases you when you fly. Fluttershy then stuttered in fear, whimpering and shivering, curled up into a ball behind a tree. She was scared out of her wits. Hey, come on, it's all right. He's gone now, Rainbow said, leaning down and nuzzling Fluttershy gently. He's gone. He won't hurt you, I promise. Fluttershy began to calm down, feeling the comfort of Rainbow Dash. She stopped shivering and leaning up, nuzzling Rainbow Dash's back. It's just one dragon. Again, we'll get you to your house, find out what's causing those nightmares, and we'll be out of there in no time, okay? Rainbow said reassuringly to her mare friend. Well, Pinky said, looking conflicted, I don't want to really lie to you two, but that might not be for a while before we face. What do you mean? There's more? More of these? Rainbow asked, looking surprised at Pinky. Well, when this happened to me before, I encountered so many monsters. Pinky hung her head solemnly, not wanting to have to say this. It's why I didn't want to have Fluttershy coming in here alone. I was afraid she'd have to face the monsters like I did. I couldn't stand the idea of having her to face them alone. Fluttershy shrunk back to her ball at Pinky's words. And you didn't think you have to tell us when we were discussing the spells? Rainbow almost yelled, but holding herself back. Hey, I tried to get a different spell to be used, and I did everything I could to make sure that we don't have to resort to this, and when we did, I refused to let her do this alone. Pinky protested to Dash's accusations. You still could have told us that there would be monsters. Rainbow felt her hair standing end. We could have used to be more prepared. We could have been used to be prepared for facing them or running away. We should have brought our elements. Rainbow glowed in frustration, closing her eyes. We could have done something as to not put our lives in danger. Rainbow panted heavily as she was angry. She couldn't remember being so angry before. I'm sorry. Pinky lowered her head, her ears folding back. Rainbow opened her eyes and then looked at Pinky. Pinky looked like she was at the verge of tears. Rainbow opened her mouth to say something, but closed it again. She was still mad, but she still couldn't stay mad at her friend this way. Rainbow turned to her head and looked at Fluttershy, who had covered her head with her hooves, shaking. Rainbow was sure that she could hear Fluttershy's soft sobs. Rainbow sighed softly, walking up to Fluttershy, laying down on the ground before her, lowering her head and nuzzling her mare friend gently. Fluttershy hiccuped softly, trying to breathe. Her mind was still reeling from everything. Fluttershy, listen to me, please, Rainbow said, closing its eyes, speaking to her from her heart. This isn't the best situation we could have found ourselves in, but I need you to know that no matter what happens or what we'll face, you're going to be okay. Fluttershy began to calm down, sniffling as she took a deep breath, feeling the comfort of her mare friend. She slowly uncurled from her ball, moving closer to Rainbow, wrapping her head around Rainbow's neck, as Rainbow nuzzled gently against Fluttershy's neck. I need you to be strong right now, alright? Fluttershy looked up to Rainbow's eyes, seeing the comfort and warmth they offered. She heard her words as they echoed in her mind. She then gulped down the nervous tensions that had built in her throat, before nodding slowly. That's my girl. Rainbow kissed her forehead. She helped Fluttershy onto her hooves. Now give me a smile, alright? It took a moment, but Fluttershy finally managed to bring her courage forward and put a smile on her face. Rainbow smiled back before turning to face Pinkie Pie, who still had the apologetic look on her face. Hey, look, Pinkie, it's alright. Rainbow then put a smile on her face for her friend. I know you meant well. You wouldn't put us in danger on purpose. But since we're already here, we might as well just deal with it. Yeah, you're right, Dash. Pinkie turned her head away from Dash, and with the look that still hurt on her face. I was really stupid, Mr. Pants. Pinkie let out a soft sigh, before putting a smile on her face. But I'll do my best to make up for this, and get us out of here as quickly as possible. So let's head for Fluttershy's house. Right, Rainbow nodded, smiling. The three mares then walked off into the fog. It seemed like a long walk to reach the outskirts of Fluttershy's cottage. The town had been deathly quiet. There was a moment or two where they had frozen, thinking that they heard the wheat bings of the dragon, but faded quickly as it came. Ponyville had become a ghost town. There were only 3 inhabitants that seemed to be free of them that seemed to have made their way out, following the path along the park, past the trees, quickly approaching the house where Fluttershy had lived. The air had been thick between them. None of them had spoken since they started walking. The only sounds they heard were hoofsteps, an occasional breeze that seemed to blow through the town. Here we are, Pinkie said, as they approached the bridge before Fluttershy's house, 3 of them just barely managing to make it out of shape of her fog in the house. Do you think my animals are okay? Fluttershy asked as she looked around, trying to spot any of the critters. I don't think there's any around, Rainbow said, looking around herself before crossing the bridge. I'm not really sure what determines what you and don't find in this world. Honestly, I figured we should come into Fluttershy's house first before home was the first place I went. So, since this Fluttershy's mind, it seems to saddens me. When I was in my mind to the path of Fluttershy's house was blocked off, Pinkie replied as she walked up to the front of the cottage, checking for any locks that might be on the door. I see. Well, I'm actually glad my animals aren't there then. Fluttershy smiled as she walked up to Pinkie Pie. I hate to put them in danger. Pinkie opened the door and found 3 of them entered Fluttershy's house. To Pinkie's surprise, the house was intact. Everything was where they should be. Nothing was run down or broken. There was not even any dust, as if the house had been sitting for a long time. What's the matter, Pinkie? You look surprised, Rainbow chuckled as she walked close fervors to the house. I guess I'm a little... Pinkie chuckled awkwardly as she closed the door behind them. So what exactly are we looking for? Rainbow asked, looking around the house. I'm not sure. I guess anything that seems odd or out of place. Something you wouldn't expect, or just a clue as what's exactly going on, Pinkie explained as she began to look around at the various shelves in Fluttershy's home. Oh well, I guess I know what's best then, Fluttershy said, tapping a hoof on her chin as she carefully glanced around the room. As Pinkie and Rainbow Dash carefully looked around the living room, Fluttershy couldn't help but feel a connection in the kitchen. She stepped out of the living room, soon entering the familiar space of her kitchen. She looked around carefully, trying to spot what she was giving in to her feelings of something was in there. It was then that her eyes fell on the fridge. Attached by a small butterfly magnet was a piece of paper, marked with what looked like crayon. Fluttershy blinked, not having seen the paper before. She slowly walked up to it, getting a better look at it. It looked as if a child's drawing was drawn with several colors of crayon. It was a simple house with a sun. Outside of the house was a happy pony attending a garden. Below the picture were the words written in red crayon. When I grow up, I'll have a house, lots of pets. I love helping animals. I keep a key to let me know when I have a house. There was a small budge under the paper, as if the paper was hiding something. Fluttershy carefully lifted the paper and looked at the back of it, seeing a key taped to the back of it. She carefully peeled the key away, looking at it, and the key was also in the shape of a butterfly. Hey, how come this door is locked? Fluttershy's ear perked up as she quickly walked back to the living room. She saw Rainbow Dash struggling to try and open the door to her closet, which was locked tight. Does it have a lock on it? Pinkie asked, returning to her side in the room to look at the door. Oh yeah, it does, Rainbow said, looking at the door. It's got the shape of a butterfly over the keyhole. Oh well, I just found a key with a butterfly on it, Fluttershy said, holding up the key. When it properly opens the door, Pinkie said, thinking about it. Though maybe I should open the door. Why's that? Fluttershy asked, a little confused. Well, I just don't want anything popping out and hurting you, Pinkie thought, before looking at Fluttershy's saddlebag. But I guess the music box isn't letting out any noise, so I think it should be safe. My music box? Fluttershy blinked, turning to her head to look at the saddlebag. Yeah, do you remember that music box started making noise when the dragon attacked? The music box will let you know when something is trying to hurt you when it gets close. So just be careful, alright? Pinkie explained, choosing her words carefully. I see. Alright, I'll be careful. Fluttershy nodded, walking up to the door. Rainbow backed up a little from the door, watching as Fluttershy unlocked the door. She slowly opened the door to the closet, looking inside the lightly lit room. She stepped inside slowly, noticing that the things that she would normally have placed inside were missing, and her place was a grandfather clock with the words written on the side of the wall. My hands are frozen, but they weren't always this way. I used to reach for the sky and wave over the crowd, while my friend to the right offered me his snack. What's in here? Fluttershy heard Rainbow ask from behind. I think it's a puzzle, Fluttershy said, thinking about the words and looking at the clock. I think I know the answer, though, she said, carefully lifting up her hoof to face the clock. She turned around the long hand up to face midnight, while moving the small one to face free. Fluttershy heard a loud click, as if something unlatched by her actions. She looked at the clock, waiting for what it would do, when it suddenly began to rush up and out of her vision. Fluttershy let out a cry as she lost her bearings, falling into the giant hole that opened up beneath her. Fluttershy! Rainbow Dash yelled before the hatch opened that had closed. Wind rushed past through her ears. Falling for the darkness, she screamed and cried. She tried to open her wings to try to stop her fall, but they were stuck glued to her sides. Her hooves flailed as she began to try and grab onto something. She descended to the bottomless of the darkness. Fluttershy let out a groan as she slowly lifted herself up from the ground. She rubbed her head as her eyes opened. It was too dark, she couldn't see a thing. Rainbow Dash? Pinkie Pie? Fluttershy called out, trying to reach for something. Only silence returned to her call. She felt her saddlebag in her hoof and remembered that something she had seen inside of it. She carefully opened up before reaching in. She moved to the music box slightly at top of the side before grabbing a hold of a lantern in her teeth, pulling it out and turning on the light. She was in a blank room. The walls seemed to be made of cement, worn by the age. The sound of the water dripping echoed off the walls. She looked up at the ceiling. A metal grate was sitting there in the way, her trying to fly back up the long shaft as she had fallen through. How did I get through the grate? She asked herself, not exactly sure what just happened. And why am I not hurt if I fell from such a great distance? She looked up at her body, not seeing any damage or feeling any pain from it, as if I was landing on hard cement after falling a great height that hadn't hurt her. I need to get out of here. I need to meet back up with Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie. Fluttershy thought to herself, quickly looking around for an exit. She saw a metal door with the long wall behind her. Okay, I just need to get my bearings, find where I am and... Fluttershy opened the metal door, revealing it to be a long hallway, water covering the floor from a small drip on the ground. The walls looked like they were modeling over the channel that seemed to stretch and turn. I have no idea where I am. She had been seeing this place before. Why is it flooded with water? She asked as she slowly began to step into it. It wasn't very deep. It only came up to about her ankles, but it was enough that the tips of her hair would drag in it. The cool water sent shivers up her spine, but she headed forward. The only sound she could hear was the splashing of her steps as she went down the long hall. The quiet hallway seemed to echo her splashing loudly. The darkness of the hallways, only being lit by the light of her lantern, sent a chill up her spine. She had really hoped that she could get out of this hallway soon. She rounded a corner along the hallway, found herself facing an intersection. The paths branched out to her left and right. Now which way am I supposed to go? Fluttershy furrowed her brow in frustration and fear. She didn't want to get lost. Not here. Not the idea that the monsters could be anywhere. Her music box began to hiss, letting out the sound of bees buzzing. She grimaced at herself for having jinxed it. The next sound she heard was the slow splashing of her steps being taken in the water. Each step to seem to have sloshed around her as it got closer. She looked down both at her paths. She couldn't tell which way the sound was coming from, and running back would only lead her to the dead end. Her attention snapped to the left route, and her eyes caught the creature emerging from her light. Her eyes widened as she stared of what was treading through the water. It was a mannequin. A moving mannequin with no head. Its body looked as if it was made of cloth, rotted away with age and wear. It had several large stems and thrown on, as if it had been put together and torn apart by many times. It had several pale, sickly colors. It looked like it had trouble walking. Fluttershy took a step back from the creature. The buzzing of the music box grew louder as it came closer. It reared its front legs up, smashed them down to the water, growing closer to Fluttershy. Her legs acted on her own, her galloping as fast down the right path, getting as far away from the monster as she could. The water kicked up and sprayed across her body as she ran as fast as she could through the hallway. The water was slowly weighing her down, but she could outrun that creature. She looked behind her. The buzzing of her box seemed to grow to a quiet stop. The mannequin didn't keep up with her. She was in the clear. She slowed down a little, breathing softly as she turned to look in front of her, stopping for just a short of running into the wall. She had come to another split road. She looked down at the path, not seeing anything unusual. Suddenly her music began roaring with its buzzing, as her head snapped out of left right before her body was hit by two hind legs, sending her flying down to the right path. She hit the water with a huge splash as it skidded along the ground. She winced her pain as her skin burned and her chest ached. The lantern had just landed next to her with a splash of water, cutting the light in the area. She groaned in pain when she felt the welts beginning to form on her chest as she groggily reached out for her light. She managed to grab the handle, lifting the lantern from the water. She could hear the steps of what had attacked her shifting through the water, getting closer slowly. She frantically moved to turn the lantern back on. It gave a few clicks without turning on, making Fluttershy grimace to turn each click. She desperately turned the knob again and again, praying for it to light up. The flame slowly came to life. Before illuminating the mannequin, those words of front hooves now stood raised over her. The legs then came down, striking her body. Fluttershy wanted to let out a scream. The handle of her lantern in her mouth just caused her to bite down. The hooves of the mannequin screeched as her skin dragged against its hooves. Pain soared through Fluttershy's mind as she witnessed her pain, eyes shut, biting down onto the lantern so hard she bleed a little, tears rolling down her eyes as she couldn't stop the attacker. "I need you to be strong right now, all right?" Her eyes shot open as she whipped through her head and looked around at the back of the mannequin. It raising its hooves once more had come down on her, forcing every ounce of her strength into her hooves. Fluttershy swirled her body around before kicking the mannequin with her hind legs. The mannequin stumbled a bit, forcing itself to put its hooves back to the ground. Fluttershy internally cursed herself for being so weak, but she was able to get back to her hooves. She turned and began to run again, escaping from the tormenting creature. She felt as if her lungs were burning, with each hoof step seemed to only intensify the pain in her chest, but she had to keep going. She rounded another corner, seeing another split before her, the buzz in the music box returning. She swiftly moved her head back and forth, seeing the mannequin trying to head for her, trying to attack her. She couldn't let it this time. She turned down the path and ran away from it. She looked up ahead of her and saw an opening. She rushed forward, putting all of her might in this one point of escape. She jumped out of the water, landing on dry land, as she reached out for the door and opened it, escaping behind it before shutting it. Fluttershy panted heavily, leaning against the cool steel door. She felt that her chest was on fire, burning from behind, tossed to the ground, and she slammed. She could feel the blood trickling down the side of her from where the creature had cut into her, as she felt like she'd been hit slowly, starting to swell. She could only let out gasping groans and pants of pain as she tried to breathe. Her lungs feel like they might burst with each breath of air. There were monsters, and just as Pinkie Pie had said they were, the music box had warned her of the danger of the creatures too. But when she had been struck, she couldn't find the strength to stand up. and she had been willing to lay there and take it. She would have let the mannequin do whatever it intended to do to her. But a voice struck out of her mind. It was Rainbow's voice. She had been told to be strong. Fluttershy had put the lantern down for a moment, wiping the blood from her mouth with her wet hoof. She was soaked, and the water had drenched her completely. She needed to dry off, as she needed to put something on her wounds. She then looked at the room, had just interjected. It was a room similar to the one that she had fallen into. Only this time there was a ladder in the middle of it, leading up into a hole with a faint light shining down from it. Fluttershy adjusted with her aching jaw, gently spitting out some blood that had been pooling in it. She then gingerly picked up the lantern and turned it off, placing it back in the bag. She rubbed her jaw gently. I need to find a better way to get light. She fought to herself for a moment. She couldn't keep holding onto the lantern with her mouth if she was going to try and keep biting down on it. Fluttershy then slowly walked over to the ladder, beginning to climb up on the one hoof at a time. The ladder seemed to stretch as far into the hole. Fluttershy could barely see the top of the ladder. Though she could still see it, a faint light was shining down of the hole, illuminating her path. The water in her mane and coat had felt like it was holding down, but slowly dripping off of her body. With a few final grunts, she managed to pull herself on top of the ladder, pulling herself to the wooden floor and only let herself lay on it. Panting as she breathed, her eyes felt a bit heavy, but she couldn't let herself lose consciousness yet, not until she at least tended to her wounds. She was in a house. She couldn't tell whose house it was, but it must have been a house in Ponyville. It was small but cozy. She grunted as she slowly got to her feet, moving towards to where she could see a bathroom in the house. She pulled 2 towels that were hanging from the wall, placed them against her body. She winced as the cotton landed on the scratches on her back, but bore the pain for a moment. She rubbed the towels against her hair and the coat, getting as much water as she could off of her. Once she felt that she was dry enough, she looked at her wounds in the mirror. The scratches on her back were deeper than she thought, but they weren't too serious. What worried her even more was the deep blue marks that had appeared on the side of her chest from where she had been kicked. Her teeth were a little red as well, but it only seemed to be the minor of bleeding. It stopped on its own. She then had looked through the bathroom drawers, found a bottle of antiseptic, and a few bandages. With every careful hooves, she cleaned her wounds, grimacing, gritting her teeth as the alcohol burned. Once it was clean, she carefully placed the bandages against her wounds and wrapped it around a few times around her body. A few tears escaped from her eyes as she grimaced in pain, but she had to make sure that the bandages were on securely. She panted once the whole procedure was over. She wobbly stood on her hooves, inspected the bandages. They'd do for now, but she would need serious medical evaluation once she found a doctor. Her eyes grew very heavily as she slowly wandered out of the bathroom. She couldn't go outside like this. If she was attacked, she wouldn't have the strength to run away. Fluttershy wandered to a nearby couch, gently slid her bag off, placing it next to the couch, before getting on top of it and curling it up. Rainbow Dash? Pinkie Pie? Where are you two? Fluttershy fought as she began to close her eyes, a few more tears escaping. Please, I need you both to be with me. I need you to be strong right now. All right? All right. I promise I will, Fluttershy said, holding back her lonely sobs. She had to be strong. She told Dash that she would be. Fluttershy slowly but surely fell asleep.